Alright, this is Professor Hot Tub, the Hot Tub Professor, and what we're going to talk about today is barbs. There's all kinds of versions of barbs. You have this version, which is a double barb that hooks tubing together. You have this version that glues into 3/4 inch. This glues into 1/2 inch. You have this version that glues into 1 inch, or you can actually glue 3/4 inside of it. And then you have this where you can glue 1/2 inch inside of it. So there's all kinds of different ways of attaching these things together. So barbs are generally used for things like this. If this right here was this is an air valve, so if you were doing 3/4 plumbing, you could do this into your air valve, and then you could actually plumb it the same. You could have this here, and then you would hook them together with tubing. And so there's all kinds of ways of plumbing. The other use would be for taking tubing and hooking it together. This is smooth barb, but it's still considered a barb. This is a barb T, 3/4. This is 3/4 by 3/8. You would use this if you were doing a bleeder system on a pump or something like that to help the pump system to automatically bleed. The other thing that you could do is if you were using a ball valve, you could glue a barb on both ends of the ball valve, and you even have barbs that are 90 degrees. So there's all kinds of different ways of setting them up. The biggest thing with the barb is there's two measurements. There's the measurement of the part that actually glues into a fitting, which would be this part right here. That, on this particular one, if I measure across it, it measures out to be almost 7/8 of an inch, so that makes this 1/2 inch. On this end, if I measure across it, it measures out to be about 3/4 to 7/8. So that would make this be 3/4. So on this side, this one is 3/4 barb by 3/4 or a 1/2 inch spigot. 3/4 barb by 1/2 inch spigot. Now the next size up would be 3/4 barb by 3/4 inch spigot, which means that this right here is going to go into a 3/4 inch fitting like this right here. So it will glue into a 3/4 inch barb. The other thing would be, the next step up would be a 1/2 inch or a 1 inch, what am I saying? So that's a 3/4 barb by 1 inch. So that right there would glue into a 1 inch fitting. So there's all kinds of different ways of doing this, but also if you got in a bind, if you ordered this and you had 3/4 inch pipe, then you could actually glue 3/4 inch pipe inside of it. But don't bank on that. Always go with the outside fitting. The beauty of hot tubs is, even though what you see there looks a certain way, you can make it be any way you want it to be as long as it's safe and it works normally. The other thing is, I want to tell you about bushings. Bushings are, let's say you had a 3/4 fitting like this right here, and you had a 1/2 inch barb, and they will not fit together. So what you could do is a 3/4 bushing, and then the 1/2 inch barb glues in. And there's also bushings for 1/2 inch stuff and for 2 inch. So you could do it. That's a 1.5 inch heater union. You could glue this inside of that, and then you could take this 1/2 inch and glue it inside of that and use this for a circulation pump. So there's all kinds of different uses for barbs. So your two measurements would be the spigot end, which is the glue end part, and then the barb end. So when you're looking for them, look for that. And here's another example. This was going to be 3/8 for airline by 1 inch. So you could actually glue this into the bottom of this air valve and then hook 3/8 airline to this to go to a manifold. Now that's not really recommended for something because it can only draw so much air. It would restrict it. So the other thing that you could do is, let's say you needed, say you glued this into the bottom of your air valve and you needed one more port. You could glue this into the bottom of that, and that will give you 13 ports rather than 12 ports. So there's all kinds of different uses. And here's another example. Here's a 1/2 inch one, so you could actually glue this into a 1/2 inch bushing like that, and that will give you 3/8. So just measure them carefully and buy away. It's very easy to do barbs, and so this is a little explanation on barbs. AmericanSpaParts.com